Hey, Thrand here. We're continuing the action review of a book that I'm very proud to own, The Illustrated Guide to Viking Martial Arts. Now, is this a manual like any other manual where you would just have one-step, two-step techniques? No, these are basically surmises of if these sagas were compared to the treaties and the manuals from 13th, 15th century fight manuals and treaties, if the techniques actually cross over. And I believe, yes, a lot of it would. We see stuff by Roland Morzeka where he does his shield work, and he does it from Talhofer's manual. But anyway, in this one, Todd Palmer with H.E.M.A did an essay of 23 sagas, and he went through there and found everything he could find that seemed like it was a crossover in the explanation between techniques seen in these manuals that occur over and over again for hundreds of years. So it makes sense that they would use them all the way back. I mean, the same type of techniques you see in the 13th century, 14th, 15th century manuals up to the Ren era, you would see them all the way back to the Viking era. Just the weapons changed slightly. They had much larger shields, longer swords, sometimes heavier to withstand blows because of the metal the technology of the time. But in this book, we're going to cover some controversial things, and we've been doing that. And this is our 5th review. I'm proud to do it for Antony Cummins with the Illustrated Guide to Viking Martial Arts. We've done episode 1, basically Viking Martial Arts 1. We've done Viking Martial Arts 2, Viking Martial Arts 3, and Viking Martial Arts 4, and this is number 5. And I'll probably have some stuff there where you can click on them if you want to go to them. We've also done some other reviews for him. He just recently sent us this book here, Iga and Koga Ninja Skills. And we never had the book until now, but we did try to recreate the Ninja Fire Thrower in part 1, but we have part 2 where we actually created where we believe it is as accurate as possible to what's described in the book. And it's actually shown in here if you look, or he shows the throwing method and all that, exactly what we use in the video. You can go there too and check that out if you like. But anyway, today we're going to be covering techniques that involve half swording and grabbing the actual blade, because they believe maybe that's what they were describing in the actual manuals, and thrusting techniques. So we're going to cover techniques with the sword that are controversial, like did they use the sword two-handed, did they grab the blade for half swording, or any type of combat techniques during the Viking era if they weren't using a shield. So we're going to test that out today. We've got some stuff set up here for you and see if that works out with the Viking edge and what we think about it. Alright, the technique we're going to talk about now is where they say thrust through and through. In my definition, through and through could mean multiple stabs or all the way through. They're assuming it means multiple stabs, and if you didn't have a shield, which almost always someone had a shield in the sagas, or they'll describe they have a offhand weapon, something made of wood that they can parry with, as well as fight with. Usually not two swords. Maybe a sax sometimes. But in this picture, it shows him using a half-swording technique. Is that possible in a sharp Viking sword? Well, we could try that and see what we think about the advantages and disadvantages. But one thing I know is there's different length blades. Some blades are extremely long. This is a reenactment blade, but the length you can see is extremely long. Then we've got my sword that I normally use, and if we compare lengths, they're much shorter. Average length was 29 inches. This blade here is sharp. And we'll test that out here to make sure I'm right, that no one's, teasing you or anything like that. It's a sharp blade. But my thing is, what I see with this is Vikings didn't wear a lot of gloves. Maybe some mitts or something if it's wintertime. The gloves weren't that common, although they did have gloves and so on. That's possible, but they're talking about thrusting this way. And you don't really get a lot of extra power from this hand. What's that for? That's for guidance. That's to guide it into the target. But with a short blade like this, I honestly believe I can stab pretty effectively over and over again, without worrying about it. Most long swords, when you see the long sword techniques, they're way longer. You've got a two-handed, the later century long swords. This is more of an arming sword in that time period. But what this was normally used for, if you look at something like this helmet here, it was so when you were stabbing, you didn't miss. See how I got it right in the eye slot? I missed, I got it in. But it made it a lot easier to do. So if you were fighting and you wanted to grapple with somebody, you could grapple, come back, hook the guy, throw him over your leg, what have you, like a technique we showed in another video. You could use the back of your sword to do so. Also, they had longer quillions, So you could even use the quillions to stab with, stab in an eye or what have you. Whereas the Vikings had very sharp quillions, and it was more set up to go on the back of the shield. So I don't really think if you were barehanded trying to thrust, yeah, see, I'm getting multiple thrusts really, really quick, but I don't think it would be any advantage to that over, you know, me just going in and thrusting like wild into the man. And this is really heavy cardboard, and so we told you multiple layers that we threw into with our glandies here, so you can see that the sword's not doing much. It's just layer after layer after layer. But yes, you could, because our helmet, we did a destruction test on a while back, possibly even get in here that way. If you're really good with thrust and point control, it is possible to get in the eye slot if you watch what I just did. On a longer blade, though, it can make it a lot more difficult. I mean, not that we need to really demo it, but it starts getting a little more difficult with a longer blade. So I believe that's why you see this in a lot of fighting, especially when you have a visor on yourself to get in here. So that would cover that. He speaks about a death thrust if someone was on the ground, and possibly describes stabbing somebody when they were sleeping on the ground if you would grab the sword this way to do it. You could, I assume, but it seems like you would have to kneel down more to do that with a Viking sword. It shows him standing straight up and doing this. But with a shorter sword like this one, and possibly even this one, you would have to lean over and be off balance to do this. I mean, it looks good in the drawing, but if the guy wasn't in a bed up off the ground, I honestly believe it would be easier if you were going to use two hands to grab it somewhere up here, you know, and actually just use it as a brace, like maybe even the quillions. Put your fingers in if there's enough room. If you see what I just did, I just kind of grabbed the quillions to help drive force into the guy and put my weight behind it. Because yes, it can be hard to thrust through a sternum or bone or so on. But that's just my opinion. Okay, here's another thing I just wanted to bring this up. It covers everything in this manual I can think of, even Grettir the Strong, but it doesn't bring up his lanyard. It kept from getting this on. I'm sorry, it's one of my favorite things. It's not quite a martial arts technique, but I think it's a unique design. Just bringing that up. But anyway, we're going to talk about, everybody asked me about this. My handle is extra long. I did the same thing everybody does. You want an extra long handle nowadays because you might wear a gauntlet or a glove. We don't believe the Vikings did. It was probably a lot tighter than this. So the question is, did they use the sword two-handed? Well, there's sagas that state that they did. That they were ambidextrous and they switched hand to hand, which I've done in some videos and played around with it, and I like using my offhand. But the question is, how did they hold it, and did it give them any extra power? Will that give me extra power if I have less and more stability? Well, of course it would give you extra stability. It's not like going to be like a hand-and-a-half sword or a long sword where you have more handle. You know, where you actually have something back here to grab so you can crank it to get your cutting power and sharp cuts. Of course it's not going to be like that. It is going to give you some stability and some power. So do I believe they might have done it if I lost my shield through it or something and I had to use it and I was trying to do a powerful blow and they pride themselves on how much power they did? Yeah, I believe it would help. As we see, we just cut through all these layers of cardboard. And you know how hard cardboard is to cut, guys? That's like amazing. Yes, I believe that that is something they did do. Now the question is, some people say with a short handle, did they possibly do this? Since they really weren't paring stuff with their blade that often, they didn't do that because it damaged the edge at that time period. Normally use swords and other items, like I said, like wooden hafted items and offhand to parry with if they did use an offhand weapon. I don't know about that. I usually use this grip myself. There's a debate on that because there is a drawing that looks like somebody from that time period was holding their sword this way with a sharp tight, but I don't know. Honestly, I've seen all these different types of grips, but if you just put it on the pommel, even if the pommel was up here, it would give you more stability, even this hand over the other hand. There's even an idea that possibly for power, you know, with a sword you can't possibly, you know, grip any other way, you could get extra power that way. Now that just cut through multiple layers of cardboard. Remember, this is just stacked cardboard. So that's harder than like tatami. And that helped my blow immensely. You know, just doing that, because I had the extra and the proper angle and the power. So yes, you could have extra power this way. But I do think grabbing the pommel was possible, and they did do it. Some of their swords were heavier and longer than these because they had to be. They're pattern welded, and that's just the way it was. So yeah, tired in battle, broken shield, lost shield, no other weapon, needed extra power to cut through some kind of heavy armor possible. Okay, there's one saga here where it states when he saw the boy within reach, he raised his sword aloft and struck Arnor's head with the back with such a blow that the skull broke and he died. Now, they assume that maybe this brought up half-swording. Remember, these are words that are translated from old texts that are written hundreds of years after the original story that have been told over and over again. Now, they're assuming that maybe this is a half-swording blow technique where you use the back, like called the death strike, I believe, with the back of the, in some manuals it's called that, with the back of the pommel or the quillions, using the sword like a mace. But this was used during the plate era, later century, with longer swords, some of them probably much heavier, but they weren't just for reenactment, they were for actual combat. So yes, I could see at that era where the cuts weren't doing anything against armor. You had to use the tip to get in niches, or you had to use something very powerful like a mace to pummel somebody, that the sword was used to grapple with more, to parry, to thrust. They had gauntlets, gloves. It made a lot of sense. But we'll try it out today, see if we can do that with a Viking sword. Yes, I can grab this sharp blade. I'm not too scared of it. I might get some cuts or something doing this. But can I hit this with some substantial power? Yes. I'm afraid to hit it too hard, probably, because it can give you some slight cuts on the hand. But I'm sorry, there's another depiction in the book, which I really probably don't even need to show you. It shows before that one, it talks about a sword pommel strike, which we've done in some other videos where we actually tested how much power it had to shatter bricks with it. Raising the sword aloft and striking him on the head with the back of it could have just been. And yes, that would have the power. You don't have quite as long a sword. If you had gloves on, you'd probably get more of a swing than I did at it. But you could see it's denting the heck out of it. So this is a powerful blow. This would crack a man's skull. In my opinion, I think that's probably what they were talking about, but who knows? I mean, it's up to your interpretation. It's not impossible he could have done that, but then again, it could have been in a situation, just to say this, I don't know the whole extent of the Saga. I could go back and look at it, but for all we know, sometimes they had their sword actually in the sheath and bound in. If that was true, then maybe he did raise it up and hit that way, and it would make more sense because he couldn't just draw it in the circumstances. Maybe it was in a situation where it was peaceful. Possible. I mean, I doubt it, but that was just an idea there. I honestly think it was probably just your conventional pommel strike to the head, because that was very common, to hit somebody with the back of it. Well, I hope you enjoyed our little demonstration today and our opinions, and like I said, they're all opinions. Some of these techniques may be very well what they were talking about. The thing is, that's why we decided to cover more controversial stuff in the book instead of basics like different sword strikes and so on, is because that's going to be the more interesting parts of the book, of course. We did everything from the only axe throw that shows up in the sagas to a foot. We showed cleaving the shield if it's possible. In other videos, we've showed disarming a man by him cutting into your shield and the sword getting stuck, which we've done earlier as well. We showed that numerous times. But anyway, I think you'll enjoy all our other reviews. Please go and watch them, 1 through 4, and this is number 5 now. Finally, we get it out. And check out that Ninja Fire Thrower, the final, part 2. There was a link at the beginning of that. But anyway, thank you, Antony Cummins. We appreciate you sending us the extra book. We're going to go through it and review it. We love historical texts that have been translated. And farewell, everyone. Thanks for reviewing.
Brought to you by Medieval Shop, Australia. That shit's... If you enjoyed our video, please like and subscribe. Find us on Facebook at Thrand and Eldgrimr's Well of Remembrance. Help improve our content. Donate at www.patreon.com/Thrand.